Like, I don't. We ran a little long. I know I was bored. I knew it was Arby was ready to go to bed at the end. So was I on the last session. So I don't want to keep us too. But let's start with okay. And let me minimize. Okay, the time value of money. And what I mean by the time value of money, let's start right at the top with the concept that money now is worth more, has more worth than the same money in the future does. Okay, and that's just like I said, let's start with that simple concept that the and when I mean worth, I guess I really mean buying power because the example I want to use is a $10 bill in 1930. All right. Back then, that $10 bill probably got you the Ritz for the night, right? It was dinner, dancing, champagne, probably cabs everywhere. It was for $10, all right? And you probably had change left over, all right? You were tipping guys, everything. So, but today, that same $10 bill, 10 US dollars, we'll be lucky if it pays for one of our appetizers. So as you can see, what I mean is that over the course of time, the buying power has diminished over. So that's one of the forces we want to keep in mind when we talk about the time value of money when we run long-term projects. That the future value of money is less than we're looking at it today. We need a way to figure that out so we can measure an investment for its merit, for its return, for its value to us today. Because we can only invest. Let's say we only have $10. We can only invest it once. Whether we're a big time investor like a J. Paul Getty, or we're someone way down the ladder where we just putting money in a savings account. Okay, we're investors. So we want, and even if it's only $10, I want to invest it for the best return. No one wants to invest it for a loss. Okay, no one does. So that's the other thing that I would say. So the other, let's take another example so I can go to the next level down. All right. So I was just talking about the buying power of money. The other thing is, let's say my friend lends me $10. All right. He lends me a 10 spot and I duck him for about 3 years or so. It takes me, chases me around. Finally, one night at the bar, I slapped the $10 down on the bar. Oh man, here's your $10, stick it up your A, right? I'm ungrateful as, of course, but that's what people are, all right? Finally, I got my $10 because I had to hassle he had to hassle the hell out of me to get it back. Are we square? No, we're not square. We may be square to the fact that he finally got his $10. Now he has no reason to ever talk to me again. But that's not what I mean economically. In economics, we're not square. First off, let's go back to the first concept of the buying power of the $10. It lost some buying power even over 3 years. All right. The example I gave you was 87 years, but even over 3 years, let's say the $10 isn't the 10 spot isn't what it used to be 3 years ago when he lent it to me in 2014. Really, its buying power today is $8.90, let's say. So the simple fact he gave it to me, he didn't see it for 3 years and got no return on it, that just the force of time, he lost 11% of his buying power. Okay, but that's only the first way he got hurt. The second way he got hurt, and more important, where we're going with this, is that he couldn't invest it. He gave it to me, and it was $10 that was lost in La La Land that he could have probably invested any number of ways much better than giving it to me, even if he put it in a savings account. Like what I'm saying is that if he was of the mindset he had $10 that he was okay not seeing for 3 years, he could have done a lot better than giving it to me and only getting face value back. Even a savings account's what, 6% or something. So even if he put it there in a very low paying vehicle back, all right, at least his buying power is better than it was when it started. At least he's in the positive. All right. No one is going to make an investment that they don't have a return on. So when we start to talk about present value and future value, we're looking at trying to get the best that we can. All right. So let me move on. We'll talk about a couple of the basic equations you need to know for the exam because of future value and present value. And again, we need to know this as project managers because projects are investments. They're just like investments from the company standpoint, from an organization looking and saying that we only have so much, even our precious people, our resources, our our tools, our time. We only have so much. And like that $10 bill, many of that we can only spend it once. So we want to make sure that we're spending it or investing it or allocating it in the right to get the best value, particularly if I'm not going to see that value for somewhere in the future, right? And then I need to weigh that against other investments that I could make that also are going to ask me to hold my money for a long time. And I want to see what their return looks like. First, let's start with the basic calculations of future value and present value. Okay. And what I'm going to say is that when you see these questions come up on the exam, okay, somewhere in the paragraph where you need to pull out at least this much information, and they'll give it to you. And like I said, they want to make you read, and so they may go on and on. Ignore a lot of the superfluous and get this. And when they're asking you about future value and present value, you need to know if they're asking a future value question, you want to know what the present value is, and you should say it in the question. Unless they're asking present value, then they'll tell you future value because the equations match up. You still have to know the discount rate. No one is going to invest money without some sort of return, okay? And where that discount rate comes from is either inside of you, and I mean your organization, saying that we're not even going to consider an investment that doesn't give us a return rate of X, okay? It could be that, or it could be whatever the best deal out there is, and we're going to use that discount rate for our calculation. You got to weigh in a whole lot of other factors when you make investments or pick projects, all the qualitative stuff and all the other factors. What I'm saying is when we get the net present value, it's only one measure. It's a financial measure of the merit of a project. But here, this is the basis of all investments that we want to see long-term investments. So if I know the future value I can calculate back. I'm sorry, if I know the present value of an investment, I can calculate its future value if I know its discount rate and how many years that I'm going to have it compound. So let's take this example here using the present value of $1,500 of investment, discount rate of 5%, and years of 3 years. So here it is. I plug it into the formula, and that's all this is. So this formula, even the top line, if you look at it, it's not daunting at all. And formulas always tell you tell you a story. Future value equals present value, which they're giving you, times 1 plus the discount rate, which you're going to pull out of the question, taken to the number of time of payment periods. Here they're talking about 3 years. The one question and I'll remind you again when we get into mock exams, but I might as well do it here in case I forget. The number of pay periods, read the question. If they're asking, if they say monthly, then it's times 12 times 3. So then over a 3-year investment, they're talking about 36 pay periods, all right? Probably not going to do that to you on the exam, but I'm telling you, be careful, all right? That and to the nth power there means to the number of pay periods. So read the question. If they're saying that the discount rate compounded monthly, then now you got a lot of papers. But it's usually annually, and we're going to do annually for this example, so you can just see the formula and know it. So all the best I can do is show you the formula, explain it to you, and then it's on you to practice and practice and practice until you're ready to take the exam. Okay, so the future value, we just plug in the knowns, all right, that we know. Here it comes to this, which comes to this. The future value of my $1,500 investment at 5% over 3 years should yield me $1,740. Whether that's good or bad, it's almost like schedule variance. It's like that negative 300. How bad is it? I know it's bad, but how bad is it? Well, here I know this is good. At least I made $240. But is that good in light of other investments that I could put my 1,500 in? And that's why the reverse formula is more important than this formula is, because we're going to carry it over. So take a look at, and it's exactly the reverse, okay? What we're doing here is we're trying to identify the present value of future value of cash flows that we anticipate coming in over the life of the investment, all right? And we want to know this based on the discount rate. So we're going to discount backwards. So it's going to be divided by. So we're going to take those future values of those cash flows, And the ones we project over, okay, that we're going to get a hit on year one, we're going to hit year two, hit year three. But what does that mean in present value terms? We really need to discount it back by the rate of return times those 3 years. You can see it's the very same formula, not times, but divided by. And what it does, it takes our $1,700 and future value in our simple equation here, takes us right back to that $1,500. So the equations match each other. That's the first thing I want to show you. This is all you really need to know for the exam, is how to do these two simple formulas. If they're asking simple future value, simple present value, this is the basic data nut that you would use to look at any investment. I want to know its future value, present value. Simple calculation. I'm not weighing against any other investment vehicles. I'm just looking at it in a vacuum. But you will see this formula, these two formulas on the exam, particularly the second one. I want you to point out to these because we're going to see the second part of present value. This part of the equation is going to carry over into net present value, which is going to be the vehicle that we use to compare investments. So we're going to look so let's go ahead and look at net present value. And what I mean by that is, and I gave you the two examples last time, and Jill, you weren't, and I'm glad you're here this time, of two projects, Project A and Project B, that we're going to talk about net present value, meaning that we're going to look at it now as a total investment, not only in a comparison with B, but we're also going to take into consideration our initial investment. So we're not just looking at the future value, or maybe we had to plot down, some upfront money to get the project started. And we're going to take that into consideration too. That comes off the top, and that's what I mean by net present value. So if we look at the two, let's look at Project A. And like I said, when you look at the questions on the exam, they may give you a table like this. They might give you a long paragraph. That's what the scratch sheet is for. So when I show you stuff like this, I'm saying that if you have to extrapolate, they're not really giving you a table. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't want you spending a whole lot of time in calculation. So they just want to know that you know what you're talking about. This is one of their opportunities that PMBOK could do that, all right? Not give you a whole lot of front-end calculations because they want to just see that you know what you're talking about and give this in the table. But if they don't, then you're going to need to take it out of, extrapolate it from the paragraph. And these are the key parts of the information for both of these investments. If you look at these investments, they're exactly what we looked at before. The same elements, except we didn't have an initial investment to look at. We looked at the cash flows. This time we're going to look at them on a year by year basis. Why? Because we're looking at an investment over time. We need to calculate the time value of money into our calculation, because at this point we're deciding, should we do Project A or should we do Project B? Believe me, there's so much more to it. There's not, all this is for net present value calculation. So it's one very good financial indicator about the merit of a project, right? And you do this as part of a project selection, but you would have to know that there are a whole lot of qualitative and other quantitative criteria that are going to figure into your project selection decision, particularly when you think about the deliverable after the project's done, all right, and its long-term effects and its value on. You want to start thinking like that too at the portfolio level. But I'm not going to go that's above and beyond this class or even the exam. But I just want you to think about where you're going with this and how it's aligned. Here, this could be a project investment. It could be stock A versus stock B, but we're going to keep it in project management world here. Okay, we're the merits of either doing project A or project B, and these are the key elements that we need to know, because there's the formula up at the top. Before I go any further, and I say that the only difference here, as you see, is that we're going to look at each of the year cash flows individually. We're going to have to, because the discount rate compounds over time on top of itself the further into time. So we have to figure that as well. Take a look at the main calculation for net present value so it doesn't freak you out at all. Net present value equals, look, this is the present value calculation. Considering each year by year, there it is, divided by 1 plus the rate raised to the time periods, minus now the initial investment. That's the other piece we didn't consider. So this really is the present value. So if you want to simplify this so it's not so daunting a looking calculation, and it really tells the story about what you're doing here. And again, I love foundational. If you understand, you can see, look at the formula and see what it's asking you to tell you what to do. This is the present value. This is present value on a yearly basis. We're trying to figure it out over time. So we're going to figure it out. We're going to discount each year back, and we're going to consider the initial investment we made back in year zero. Okay, on day one, we plop down for, we would have to plop down $10,000 on project A. We would have to plop down $15,000 on project B. We would anticipate the cash flows at as thus. Okay, and they'll give you a simple example like this on the test. In the real world, hey, listen, projects aren't 3 years and 3 years. I might compare a 7-year project to a 3-year project for its merit. I, I may also want to continue to think about cash inflows and outflows of a project when I think about its merit. This is just to figure out net present value so that you can pass an exam. Okay. And by the way, this is kind of a universal indicator. Almost every industry uses it to make decisions, okay, based for long-term investments. So let's look at these two. And you'd have to say, just looking at them on the face, if I didn't have a way to calculate, I couldn't really, by just looking at it, decide which one's better for the company. I couldn't. So let's subject them both to a net present value calculation. Let's start with Project A, okay? And if you take a look at Project A, hold on, let me move this box out of it. It's in my way. Let me move it here. Okay. Net present value, okay, as you can see, what I've done is I grouped the 3 years, all right, along right here, along with as it calls for in the formula, right? Each one taken to its power. So I'm going to take that $2,000 in inflow of year one to its discount rate of 4.5 in the decimal world is 0.045 raised to one pay period. I'm sorry, one time period. And then we're going to look at the 7,000 in year two. That 7,000 needs to be subjected to the rate at two time periods. Why? Because it's 2 years into the investment. Okay. We need to look at this because it's really not $7,000 2 years from now. All right. And so we need to know that for an investment today. But the further out this goes, the more we need to know. Okay. The more risk we take by letting someone hold our money for 5 years before we see anything come back. Year three, I take in that $11,000 that I take, and I've compounded that rate times 3 times periods, okay, minus initial investment of $10,000. I'm going to stop here and ask both of you guys, do you see what I've done so far with this calculation?
Yes, I have.
Okay, is it a little clearer for you?
But yeah, I have.
Is it any clearer now than it was 10 minutes ago for you?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the calculation then. And what I did here is I actually did this. I could pull up a calculator. You're not going to make me do it, are you? But what I did is at 1.045 is that, here it is, the one plus the rate, right? So in year one, it's only to the one time period. So it's going to be that $2,000 cash flow at 1.045. The second year is 7,000 divided by 1.09. Where did I get the 1.09? That's 1.045 times 1.045, which is now that's the effect of compounding 2 years. It's a compound on a compound. So, and the same effect gets even worse. Yeah, it gets even deeper the further we go along in time. As you can see, we're compounding at 1.14 in year three. If I do the figures, here's what we come up with, okay? Is the $2,000 today after the first year. That $2,000, by the way, I plop that is, I see at the end of year one. This initial investment, I plop that down on what we're calling year zero in the accounting world. I know we've all seen this, and you, Aubrey, as an MBA, you shame yourself. You don't get You understand what I mean by year zero? It's day one. It's I plop this investment down. So from this day forward, it's going to take the first year for me. Uh, I'll see that $2,000. Okay, so it did have an effect of the first year on it. So in reality, it's $1,913.88. The second year, in reality, it's 6410 and so forth. Minus the $10,000 initial investment, we continue to do the calculation. We see our final net present value, and this is what we're trying to get to, is this calculation here. So we can rate project A. And we see it comes to $7,963.25. Do you guys see how I got to that before I go to project B?
Yes, sir, I saw it.
Good. Okay, so let's go to project B, because what we're going to do, we're going to subject it to the very same calculations, okay, and we're going to compare the net present values. And for the exam, the higher number wins, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. That in project B, our initial investment, there it is, the $15,000, the 3 years of cash flow at the 6% rate, which is 0.06 in the decimal world, right? So, and there are the cash flows. And if we do this, and remember the effect of compounding, here's our numbers, and it comes to this figure. I'm not doing it because I want to move on with the lecture. What I'm saying is the net present value number for Project B is 39,063 cents. Now, in a vacuum, we say to ourselves, the first question is that you might see in an exam is that a positive net present value is a good thing, like a positive variance is a good thing. Doesn't mean it's the investment of choice. It just means that just like any good variance, that if it's positive, it's a good thing in just in and of its nature, that it is a winner. Even if it's $1, it's a winner. It qualifies. Here, that's a pretty good number, 3,960. But comparing the project A, it's a loser. Okay, and since we can only do one of these two projects, as good as much as we might want to do project B, we're going to choose project A. And I want you guys to see that, and for the test, it's just simple. You're going to do a simple calculation. I want you to see that if you're tripped up by anything, it's the middle of the formula. But the middle of the formula is present value that I showed you in the earlier screen, calculated on a year-by-year basis. That's it. That breaks down that big wide formula there. It figures it all out, and you get to an answer. So what you're trying to do here for the test is pull out the key information, and hopefully they give it to you in a table so you can just go ahead and do calculations. And like I mentioned to Aubrey last week, Joe, and I'll say it again to you, that when you start to practice doing some of the calculation stuff that's going to be time consuming for the exam, practice using the desktop calculator that you're going to have to use for the exam. Go ahead and give yourself that it's going to hold you back a little bit, but it's not. You're going to get better at it, and at it just at the right time. You'll never have to do it again. After the PMP exam, go back to using a regular calculator that we all are very comfortable with right next to us, or some software or whatever. But for the exam, that's it. That's your calculator tool. So I'm saying to both you guys that practice using the desktop, because you also have to race against time as well as getting the correct answer. Okay, enough said. But this is net present value. I'm done. I've showed you net present value and why. We're doing it for a project selection basis, and why we would choose project A. Any questions?
So just a
No.
clarification. So you're saying that when we're talking about cash flows, we're talking about how much of that investment is available each year?
That's correct. That's our
Okay,
that's
I
our
understood. Yeah.
that's our payback, and it's a good thing that we do it in uneven cash flows, because serious business people need to look at cash flows, both inflows and outflows. Remember back in cost management, we talked about a couple of things. We talked about we were the ones that came up with project funding requirements was one of our outputs in cost management. Another one was funding reconciliation, where we had to match the work to the funding, right? We start getting in these kind of areas, all right, when we start talking about cash flows and stuff like that. But for the exam, we're not going to get that tough, Jill. Know this, okay? Know know the formula and understand it and why you're using it. It's a selection tool like the other ones that I showed earlier. By the way, one other point I want to make is opportunity cost. So for the exam, the answer to opportunity cost is project B. And what I mean by opportunity cost is the difference between the return that we anticipate for project A and the return that we anticipate for project B is the cost that we gave up, the opportunity that we gave up. Okay. And I mean, in the context of return, we anticipated X return for B, but we chose to take A. And so we gave up that anticipated return for B. That anticipated return for B is what's called opportunity cost. Somehow they're going to word a question like that on the exam. Okay. And as business people, we understand what that means. As investors, we want to keep an eye on our opportunity cost because we want to see wins and losses, right? We want to look back retrospect and see how well we've done, looking at opportunity costs that we gave up. That look, think about that $10. Let's go back to that $10 investment back in 1930. Let's say I bought 100 shares of American Telephone and Telegraph back in 1930. I think they were around then, and just kind of sat on. I could have retired a billionaire, right? I mean, it's just anyway. Let's move on. All right. Do I have to? By the way, do I need to show you guys this one? I'd rather not. I mean, the decision tree. Did you guys get this, or do you want me to show you this?
We went over that last week. I'm good.
Good. Jill, you've seen these. Do you want me to show you how this thing works, or?
I think I was okay when I looked at it.
Okay. All right. If I promise you, I'll stop and we'll on the second pass. It's something I will at least explain. Maybe I won't give you a problem on it, but I'll explain it again on the review because I really do want to get into a couple other things.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm here and I have this up, I want to show you communications channels. It's just one of the other formulas you need to know for the exam. Showing it to you here, and I'm also going to show it to you Thursday when we talk about communications management. But I'm doing this because I want to remind you that we do a lot of control on and communications is one of the ways that we really control our projects. Is who gets to talk to who, right? One of the formulas that you need to know for the exam is the communications channels number. And I'm giving the example of that there are 30 identified stakeholders on our project. What this formula does here is that it calculates the maximum possible number of communications channels there can be between 30 stakeholders. All right, so you get an idea. First of all, so let's go ahead and do this. The formula is and very simple. Nothing so far I've showed you is calculus. Nothing. All right. N times n minus 1 divided by 2 is the formula you need to know for the test. All right. And again, you're trying to come up with the number of possible channels for a couple of big reasons. First off, I want to show you the sheer power of just how big it can get. And I think PMI did this for the same reason. Let's run the formula for just 30 simple stakeholders. Think about, and it comes up to 435 possible communications channels between that's every stakeholder getting a chance to talk to every other stakeholder. So my point here is on this screen is that on big projects, we could have hundreds of stakeholders. We want to control this. We don't want this to get out of hand. So this formula does two things. One, it shows you as a project manager, the monster. And I'm telling you, if you really get your handle on something that helps to control your project, that really flows that stakeholder journey as well as the project's journey, it's how you tailor your communications. Think about this. So you won't. So the other big thing about knowing the size of how many channels is that now you can't miss anything. It's like everything else we do in project management. Now I know what the maximum is. I know there's 435, so I can start to whittle it all down. I don't need my CEO talking to each and every engineer, do I? So we can whip them off the list. But as I'm whittling down to the ones that I really do need, do I not? And if I do it right, I'm going to make sure that I get to a point that I didn't miss any either, like the power of a breakdown structure does. We love this in project management. When I say bite-sized, I don't mean just work breakdown structures. I mean things like this as well, that registers and logs and lists, okay? Put fences around things, make us control things. It gives us a level of control. So arguments don't even have to start, or things don't get into projects that shouldn't have got in. Many, many, many good reasons. So here's a good, you know this formula for the exam, but know it for two reasons. So because when you go to do your communications plan later, you're trying to control the flow of communications. Who's talking to who, when, and for what purpose. Talk about that on Thursday night, okay? So now let's move on. I want to talk. Tonight we're going to do procurement management, and we're going to do quality management as well. 1 second here, folks. I'm trying to find my cell phone. I'm sorry, I left it across the room. I'm going to keep an eye on the time, so we take a break at a good time, like about 10 after 7 or so. So we're in a really good pace here. Okay. So again, like I try to do all the time, I want to take you back just like 5 yards back again, but this time from a thinking standpoint, right? That this is what we're building and plan, right? In all of our planning process, the real output that we're going to take into execution with this is this, right? It's the triple constraint. It is our baselines of scope, time, and cost. And we got here through, of course, I'm sorry, let me go ahead and do my animations. Of course, we got there through the progressive elaboration. I don't mean to beat a dead horse. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we want to hear in, we want to chime in from all the knowledge areas. I was thinking today of another analogy that I could use, and I was thinking about this. How about like for this diagram that we're getting an input from everybody. How about if, like, you guys, I don't know if you're old enough to remember the old Batmans, where all the villains and their henchmen all had their names on their right on their shirts, right? Sneezy or whatever, whoever they was right on their shirts, right? Think about a meeting that's, I know I don't want to get silly here. I'm just trying to make a point that in the meeting, there's someone just sitting in there, and on their shirt it says procurement management on it. All right, this is our planning meeting, and Jill's shirt says quality management on it. All right, and they're each person chiming in, saying, "Well, we have to keep this in mind and that in mind." Not only they're experts in their fields, okay, in each and every one of their fields. So their measurements and their criterias, and they're all been well thought out and considered, are all going to have their impact on setting those baselines, right? Before we can say we're ready to go. All right, so I'm just trying to use that as an analogy that, Jill, you have quality management on your shirt. I used you in my, but that's our meeting, okay? And think about that as everybody's chiming in until we've come to a plan, all right? And we don't forget anybody, all right? That's how I'm trying to look at this. So I want to move into procurement management, and I want to show you this. Here we're going to look at contract types that you need to know for the exam. So there is some things that for the exam you just absolutely will see, and you might have to do a little bit of figuring, all right, to get the answer. Maybe PMP is good for two-part questions where you have to figure something out first so you can answer the second part, kind of thing. Here in procurement management, I want to step back and think like a project manager. What are we doing in procurement management? Well, we're looking outside of our organization for resources. That's what we're going to do now in procurement management. And those resources can be material resources, people resources, tools, anything. It could be a lot of things that we could, storage facility, anything that we're looking for that we need to outsource. And it's going to be part of our project, and we need to figure it into our project costs and into our project schedule, particularly if we're talking about material deliveries and crews showing up. And so we need to manage this like a project manager and say these are, so for in one respect we look at those resources, whatever we outsource as part of our project resources, we look at them just like our own internal resources, or once they're part of our project, that's why we're going to look at them, is that they're at our disposal. But we also need to think about that the relationship is different. It's contractual. It's not employee, employer, uh, relationship where I can just kind of assign you and, kind of hold you to the the employee handbook that you signed and all that kind of stuff. With vendors, I do it with contracts. I do it with agreements. Okay, that's how and so especially if I'm just creating a new relationship with a vendor. I'm looking. I have a new RFP, and I'm sending it out to the world, and I'm inviting bids now. So I'm creating a new vendor relationship. This is my chance now to create terms and conditions, create circumstances that I like about to control that relationship down the line. I'm not like Mr. Burns necessarily, all right? But if I leave things willy-nilly, especially with contracts, I'm really going to get burnt, all right? Here's where, like most human interaction, like most professionals, if you set good, solid expectations, good, solid, reasonable fences early, there is no argument. We look at each other. We both know we're not dummies, and from now on, so we're not going to try to take each other or lie to each other. I'm just saying it really has a rock and a pond effect. We have to look at your vendor relationships a little different than your employee relationships. So remember, your relationships are contractual and they're not employee. So that's the first thing I would point out to you. So think like a project manager. I'm going to manage those relationships a little differently, using different tools and different methods. Still going to use my people skills, my effervescence, but we'll talk about that here soon. We have to select our vendors based on our needs. Got to tell you, I want to get the best, just like we just talked about investments. I want to get the best for the least, right? Just like, hey, everybody, when you take down the consumer that has $10 to spend on a pizza, right? I can get a pizza from 7 different places tonight. I want to get the one that gives me 2 toppings and whatever. I'm going to select based on my needs and try to get the most value for my money. We're going to talk about selecting vendors based on our needs, but we're going to have to establish those needs first. Outsourcing is a decision that has to be made first before we go too far down the line in procurement management. We have to decide that we actually need to go outside the company in the first place. So we're going to have to establish make versus buy or build versus buy first. Let's say we've done that. If once we do that, we want to set a set of criteria to select vendors. Okay, we're okay. We need to go outside the company because we just can't. We don't have the bandwidth, or where it's not our expertise. But how are we going to select the person that will do us, or the company that we are going to partner with? We'll talk about that. We're going to control those relationships by contract types. For the exam, I'm going to show you the 3 big types of contracts and then the subtypes within them, and when and why you might use them for the exam. And I'm trying to teach you what I'm teaching you here. It's a PMP exam course, right? A prep course. So I want you to pass an exam. So, but I do want you to get better at this further on down the line. Because again, contracts are relationships on paper. That's what they are. Human beings agreeing to something and then putting it to paper and holding each other to it. It's the basic tenet of a contract, okay? I remember that we talked about contract. I just talked about in risk management. Joe, I know you missed that, but you saw it. One of the strategies and you needed to know for the exam was that you can transfer risk. So for example, on a construction project, if I delay the project, the general contractor might hit me with what's called liquidated damages. Those are delay penalties. Let's say I took on a subcontractor that was part of my drywall crew. He was really my delay. I maybe can pass the pain on to him. I don't like it. I'm still embarrassed in front of the general contractor. But contractually, I've passed on some of the pain or all of the pain on to the real problem was my contractor. And believe me, at the point before we signed the contract, I made him agree to stuff like this. Listen, you can't hold me up, man. My general contractor would be like liquidated damages. If you're the reason that we have a holdup, then I'm going to give you the LDs. You need to agree to that. So we're going to talk. So when we talk about contracts, these are the terms and conditions, or T's and C's, that we're going to put in the contracts. They're going to make sure that nothing that we run the straight and narrow all the way through to the end of the project. But remember, this is part of a risk management strategy, so we can transfer some risk along by contract to our contractor, okay? and we control by terms and conditions I just alluded to, that we can structure a contract, the wording of a contract and the things that we require and when we require them and when they're going to get paid and all that, especially the payments, because that's how you really control. It's the skin in the game thing. So when we talk about risk transfer and I talk about controlling with payments and things like that, it's the carrot and stick, I know, but I'm also, I don't know. I'm also talking about this is how a good way to motivate people. You understand pain points, and I mean skin in the game. When somebody has something personally to lose, okay, they tend to really get it done. So that's what I mean by passing on some risk transfers. Maybe it's a good thing, all right, that they do taste some pain if they're a problem. So it's a good and it's a good risk transfer strategy for you. All right. I'm telling you all this because these are tools at your disposal, but I'm an old head of a project manager. When I first started out, they almost wanted me to just beat the hell out of my contractors and get price, try to get $10 worth of work out of them for $1. And that made you a hero. I don't know.
Mhm.
No more do I manage like that. This is a symbiotic relationship. My vendors, just like my project team, can break me if they can't deliver. Particularly if I cause circumstances that broke them, and now they can't deliver. I get what I deserve. We talked about this. We're going to talk about it a little bit further down. That the contracts are a good thing. Okay, if a vendor is performing, then you should be there for them to make sure. I'm going to make sure you get paid on time. I'm going to make sure that you stay on the preferred A list, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. These are the relationships that I'm building. Same as I'm building with employees. I want a personal and a professional relationship because I can leverage both. And if I'm a smart manager, I'm not using a hammer every time. Though a hammer is in my tool set, believe me. Some people it gets to, you got to smash their head in, metaphorically here.
Mhm.
All right, you do. And that's all that's the only way it's going to end. So let's go ahead and talk about procurement management here. Let me take a quick look at time. We're in good shape. We're about 20 minutes to our break. This is great.
Yeah, I was just going to make a quick comment, Clark. I was just going to say you're talking my language because my company is virtual in the U.S., so this vendor management is a huge aspect of our job.
So you see what I mean when I'm talking about regular guy that I want to get the best price. I'm a custodian of the,
Yep.
that's what I'm supposed to do. And I'm supposed to get the most efficient and everything. I do that
Yeah.
internally, and so I'll do it that, but I'm not going to break people. And I got to tell you, there's a point that
Right.
that attitude turns around and breaks yourself. And construction's a
Yep.
great example. I saw it many times with little contractors that because the bigger contractor beat them up with their contract and held them to the strictest of terms and conditions, they
Mhm.
couldn't make their payroll or they couldn't buy their materials, and it held up the job even further. And I was almost laughing. Good for you, you bastard.
Right. Yeah, that relationship building is key, and we always do milestone payments and things to encourage them. Yeah, a relationship is like so important. Sometimes I'd rather pay the extra money if I know I'm going to have no trouble with that vendor versus knowing that I might save money, but I'm going to have a headache on my hands.
What a great,
So,
what a great point you just made. Okay. And like I say, you spend a little more, but you would do that as a consumer. You think about you getting quality, right? You're getting,
mhm.
especially if it's somebody that's come through for you before. Okay. So you have a
Right.
confidence level, right? And that's risk management. So it's all good. Thinking like a project manager, you're thinking projects start, projects end. So the same people that I'll see them again and again and again, right? Same thing with
Mhm.
sometimes in vendors. I see them again and again and again. Or even if I don't,
Mhm.
maybe I call them up because I need their expertise and they're willing to help me out because I gave them a break. I
Mhm.
was a good guy. If vendors are performing, then you
Mhm.
do the right thing by them. All right. If they're not, then
Yeah.
okay, enough said. Let's talk about procurement management. And like I said, I always stop at this screen to show you guys the knowledge area in and of itself, even though I'm not teaching knowledge area by knowledge area. This is a good point for me to stop and point it out to you that if you're going to memorize, this is the way I would ask you to do it. Memorize processes as a knowledge area because they'll mean more to you if you think that way. Here, procurement management is 4 simple processes, okay? And it kind of shows you where they reside. They make sense, all right? That except I have a small pet peeve, and I'm going to ask your guys' opinion about it right before the break here, because we'll take a break at 10 after one way or another. I think 12.2 is really a planning process. Conducting procurements is really a planning process and not, and yet it resides in the executing process group. For the exam, that's where it resides, and it's not because I'm an old head, but I'll show you what I mean. That when we conduct procurements, really, this is the selection process. That we're going to be doing all of our picking our vendors and awarding our contracts. And I'm not necessarily going to wait till I get to the execution process group, to where I'm actually doing the project before I do that, would I? That's more of a planning process. That's just me saying it. But maybe PMI saying it's executing process because it's work for you, the project manager. And then I counter that by saying, but I would still do that work in the planning process, would I not? So I don't know. But that's my pet peeve in procurement management, all right, is that I believe that 12.2 is really a planning process. But they have an execution for the exam. This is how it goes. This is the methodology. Don't listen to me, listen to methodology. Let's talk about 12.1. Much like all the rest of the dot ones, they're your friends, all right? They're project governance, project controls within the project. And when we talk about the dot ones, it's as it relates to that knowledge area. So again, back to that meeting of everybody with their names on their shirts. This is the dot one, all right? So that, this is how the knowledge area says that as we handle procurement management, this is the criteria we're going to use. These are the measurements we're going to use. These are the time periods we're going to use, whatever, etc. If we're going to change anything, this is the process we're going to use, because because the expert in procurement management said so, okay, and gave us a structure, a framework. Really, that's what the dot ones all are. They're good, solid frameworks that have depth to them, right? That have real metrics to them, the line to measure against, to get to where we're going. Especially if we're doing selection criteria, we're going to be round after round. So we have to get people to go from, well, I think it's good, to, well, I think they're better. No, we got to get them down to the end. We need to do that by establishing real marks and the lines in the sand. We do that here in the dot ones. Okay, so let's talk about the dot one. Part of dot one is putting together all the plans for selecting a vendor. If we were going to go outsource, here's the process. So the 12.2 is an output of 12.1's process. So maybe that's why. But like all good knowledge areas, I'm looking at it again from the regular guy thing. Good project managers look at funnels, fences, and bite size. And here in procurement management, we're really no different. The different perspective in procurement management is we're no longer looking at this project as we're the vendor providing the project for a client. Here in this context of procurement management, we're the client. We're the client and the vendor looking at us, okay? So you'll see what I mean as I talk about that, but we're looking outward, okay? So we're the client looking out. So we're on the other side of the table. Like I said in risk management, a few other things, 2 sides of the table. It's always a good thing. So when I show you contract types, I want you to see why would I use either side from one side or the other. Funnels, fences, and bite size. Same thing as we try to funnel down our needs. What needs do we need from the outside? We're going to establish measurement criteria and such just to make our selections, and then we're going to plan our project and take it into execution. And what I mean by planning here is planning our procurement processes and needs and integrating it into the rest of our project, okay? The flow of the rest of our project. If I'm going to integrate outside vendors, then their schedules are going to be intertwined with my other schedules. Same thing with supply deliveries and such, okay? That I need to figure them in for time and dollars, all right? So let's move forward. when we talk about procurement management, one of the first things we have to decide is really do we go outside the company in the first place? Outsourcing, like I said, is a decision. So this is something you'll see on the exam. And this, and any good business school tells you this, that you got to come up with a make versus buy or a build versus buy or something like that. If any good business school showed you something like this, it's the classic decision. Do we do it in-house or do we buy it from outside? And there's good and bad reasons for both. I generally say good reasons to look outside of the company is that one of the things I don't outsource unless I have to are my own core competencies. So project management itself, I don't outsource unless I have to. But let's say for Spartacus, I needed an accounting function. And maybe I'm not very good with payroll. So I partner with a payroll company to do those kind of things for me. I need to establish I had a real need for that I couldn't just by Peachtree do my own and such. So you guys get where I'm going with this. I have to, I have to justify that I need to go outside the company and I may do this because I see value in doing so. Yeah, there's cost in going outside, but I might get a value.
But sometimes the cost, maybe it's cheaper for you to go outside versus you trying to do it yourself. And sometimes the quantity or the quality of the product is better than what you could actually produce inside your company.
Well,
correct?
Well, let me give you a couple of other things to think about. First off, what if it's not cheaper? It's a little more expensive. But to Jill's point, okay, I have a comfort level, and if I was going outside anyway, plus I have to value see the second half of this sentence here is where I want to go now is my value my core resources. So I could like that $10 bill. I can only spend it once, right? So I'm gonna talk about maybe the things that I might also because I spend a few dollars more. I'm using my internal resources better. Plus, I'm transferring a little bit of risk. So I'm also for that premium. I'm getting that comfort level, and contractually, maybe I'm transferring some risk that I can't with an employee. What can I do with an employee? Fire them. That's personal risk. I get it, but it's not recouping risk like I can with a contract. See what I mean? But first, I need to establish. I don't want to belabor this. I have to establish through real business cases that I need to go outside the company to do this. Okay, and there could be a lot of reasons. Remember, it's part of a bigger risk management strategy. If I'm going to do this, if I will go outside the company, I need to establish rules of the road, right? So criteria, what attributes and capabilities of either a vendor or a supplier or whatever, or a consultant even, what attributes am I looking for? And what levels am I looking for? And then I'm looking for differentiators because not just one consultant out there. So what's going to differentiate? What's going to make me decide once I get down to the final three companies? They're all qualified. What's the final differentiators going to be? I'm going to decide that now instead of waiting and being subjective later. All right. How will we manage contracts? And I'm going to come up with reasons or how I'm going to do disputes and changes. It's a good thing now when I put contracts together to put codicils in there to decide what happens if we come to loggerheads. You just don't walk off the job, all right? I can't. So I'm going to put things in there that are going to be, and good contracts have stages, phases. Let's start with this. Let's go to that. We'll go to mediation. Blah, blah, blah. Once the lawyers get involved, they'll say it a couple of times. You're done. The game's over. The only guys win now are the lawyers. All right. And they're slow because everything they do, they're putting on the clock. They have no interest in actually settling until it's 6, 7 years down the road. It's just, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, but for your own stake, for your own sleep at night, these are one of the things you put in so that you have a control in your process. Because remember, they're vendors. So like I said, contractual, and so you got to take into consideration, put something in that says if we come to a lottery, you just don't walk off the site or you refuse to do it or think ahead, all right? Also establish clear and concise a statement of work. Remember, I told you, in this case, we're the customer. So remember, where did you see statement of work before? You saw it once before. You saw it way back in the initiation process when we chartered a project. We asked our customer to give us a statement of work. It's a narrative, a detail in their best words, okay, of what they want and what they're asking for. The more detail, so the better, because our aim here is we don't want vendors to have to ask a whole lot of questions. I want them to ask some questions to show me that to clarify and such, but I want to get to the end of the process, and so I'm playing my cards face up at this point. I want them to clearly understand what I want. So far, I'm not going to beat them up or even think. Right now, I want them to have a clear understanding. Okay, so I'm going to have a clear and concise statement of work, which is going to include a work breakdown structure because we're professionals. So it's enough that they can come back to me with a response, with a request for a proposal. I want them to come back to me with milestones and a proposed budget so that we can move along in the process. I do. So I've got clear and concise, and I mean it. This is to my benefit as well. I engage my vendors, ensuring a complete understanding of requirements so that I rate potential vendors against project objectives, business value, performance criteria. My stakeholders are going to help me here. All right, if I'm going to outsource, what's important in as far as their characteristics, the qualities, the attributes, the objectives that I'm going to need to for the outside people to help me pick who is going to get the contract, okay? And then I'm going to select my vendors and award a contract and enter into a relationship that I carefully crafted in a contract, all right? Then I manage that vendor per agreements and those contractual obligations, those T's and C's. So first I selected a contract type. It's 702. I have just enough time to start into them anyway. And then in my dot one, I want to come up with a way to formally close out contracts. You're going to see this in the closeout process group, that this is one of the things we really want to take care of. Not only do we want to worry about all the lessons learned that we learn from just doing a project, but this is important. We want to close out our contractual relationships, make sure we don't have anything hanging out there that can come back and bite us. Do we still owe somebody something? Is there issues still outstanding and we're walking away from? Not good later in a court of law. Some guy in black robes isn't going to like that. That we knew that something was open, we left it that way. We forgot about it. We were busy. It's me. It's not going to matter then. In the light of day 7 years from now, it's not going to matter. Okay. We want to formally close out our project. And many companies, there is a formal closeout procedure that they actually retire the contracts in a record management system. So no, that's going to be one of the tools and techniques later on is that we're going to use a contract management system or a records management system, particularly if we work at a J&J. They're not going to let us write up our own contracts and manage our own contracts. We're going to do what we're told, use the contract templates like we're told. Something's out of sorts, we're going to have to run it past legal. You bet, okay? But this is PMBOK and it's generic. So they're saying that we're in charge of all of this so that you know the process. So if we were in charge of all of it, we would want to put in some sort of form or at least remind ourselves that we need to formally close out all of our vendor contracts. All right, it's a good thing. Let's look at the process itself. All right. It's a dot one, so the project management plan, that's that 4.2. What does that mean? It means the collective state of all of our subsidiary plans and our buckets, right? At whatever snapshot, whatever point of time, I'm using it as an input to this process that I'm running time and time again through progressive elaboration. I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor it, but this is just so you continually visualize. The requirements documents. Remember, we're going to start looking at this as an outside project almost because I need to bring a vendor in, so I need to scope out a project so that they can bid on it. I need requirements documents. I need a risk register because when I outsource, I'm going to add risk. One of the big areas of risk of outsourcing is I do give up some control, do I not? Again, it's not an employee-employer relationship. A vendor can decide to pick up stakes and leave and say, I'll see you in court. And I could say, but. They do that. There is a level of risk because they're not under my direct control. Enough said, we'll talk about that a little bit more. My activity resource requirements. So as I put together a statement of work and things, I'm thinking about my activity resource requirements so that I can, especially if I'm looking at labor and or materials for that labor. So when am I going to need my materials? It's a good time to look at that now. The project schedule obviously plays a part in looking at the vendors, or even if it's static material, I still need to schedule its delivery, and particularly if I'm scheduling crews of workers. Activity cost estimates. So I'm treating these vendor contracts as resource costs. I have to identify them just like I did to do the triangle. I'm not done the triangle, right? I'm treating it as a piece of that I'm going to sub out a piece of the work. And so therefore, the better that I define the base of the triangle first, the scope of it, I can come up with the estimates of time and cost. And then I can integrate that into the bigger project schedule. All right, that's where I'm going with this. My stakeholder regimen, of course, it's big. The big inputs are my organization. There's make or buy analysis that we talk about. So we kind of have to prove our point first that we can do this outside, or we should do this outside. Expert judgment. I know I don't want to pontificate. Experts are great. They may be people you've known 20 years, maybe people you just brought onto the project. If there are people like that, do the Reagan thing, all right? Trust but verify, right? Trust but verify. I always do that even with data or any other conclusions, or try to see if I can come up with them from 2 or 3 different ways, folks. It really does give you that level of comfort. And if you can, why wouldn't you? Sometimes you have to go with the one estimate because you can't really come up with it any other way. You're breaking new ground, or the circumstances are different than any. See, it's apples to oranges. But there are way too many situations out there where it is apples to apples. All right. And in the case of market research, what you've done, and particularly in the case of supplies, we're okay in market research. We're looking at the best prices. I mean, a 2x4 is a 2x4. Okay. And if that's the case, then it is a case of looking for the best price and the best availability. All right. Endless meetings because I need to define my requirements just like I did with my own overall scope. Remember, this is a piece of my big base I need, and so it's a base in and of itself. I'm going to have my endless meetings. My outputs are my procurement management plan. So the dot one that says this is how we're going to do this, about even selecting to go outside, and then when we do go outside, here's the process for doing so, and managing once we award. We're going to produce a procurement statement of work, like I said, because in this case, we're the customer. So we're going to come up with a statement of work, and we want it to be concise. We do. We don't want a whole bunch of ambiguity. I don't want to answer a whole bunch of stupid questions. I want to answer intelligent questions. I want to get there. Okay. I'm also going to produce procurement documents, things like RFPs and RFIs and RFQs. I'm going to talk about those in the next screen. But these are documents that we create so we control the process, communication between us and our vendors to the point where we actually award of someone the contract. Okay. Actually, we're going to do contract types right after the break. We're going to finish this screen, and the next we'll take our break. Source selection criteria. This is all the things that are important to us, qualitative and quantitative when we do enter a selection process, and then the make or buy decisions that we talked about in the beginning. They're an output of the whole process. And of course, we have change requests. And those change requests will be indeed subject to formal change review. I'll show you that when we get to the execution process groups. Okay. And there's always the effect of progressive elaboration. All right. Let's do the screen real quick take a break because it is 7:09 by my, so 7:10. So again, key project documents from the dot one. And I say this because you say this on the exam. That's why I really want to finish this, then take a break. The statement of work and the work breakdown structure. So you might see questions on the exam that, what are you preparing? What are you thinking about as a project manager? You're putting together a statement of work and an associated breakdown structure. That's what I want to see from my customer. That's what we're going to provide to those vendors. And it's part of our methodology anyway. Statement of work, you see it twice in the methodology. It's the second place. Know it for the test and a little mini work breakdown structure, okay, that you're going to use. And once you do have a vendor, then you're going to integrate everything. selection criteria, those qualitative and quantitative. You're going to weigh things that are more important to you than others and all of that. We'll talk about that when we come back from the break. Objective and subjective selection criteria to get the best value for our dollar, for our outsourced dollar. And those procurement documents that we talked about, they're going to be an output. We're going to control the documents. And so like I showed you early in the lectures that we could make them look pretty and all that stuff. But first we start with templates and we can, and so a lot of this can be done for us. Maybe templates are provided for us. And I explained that. Does anybody not understand what an RFP is? A request for proposal. An RFI is a request for invitation. So I'm going to show you an RFI when I get the bidder conferences. So when I invite my bidders to come in or on a video conference or something, so they can ask further questions, things like that. Know these documents. All right. It's about tailoring the situation for us. So remember, right now we're already controlling the vendor relationship before we even award it, are we not? We're setting the expectations that we're no dummies. We know what we want. We're gonna ask the right questions, et cetera, et cetera. That will carry over into the relationship. Believe you me. All right. Those make buyer decisions based on credible data. So again, data from two different sources that come to the same conclusion makes me sleep at night. Those decision trees that I show you, cost benefits analysis, just know of these tree and value analysis. You're not going to get made to do things like just know these tools or exist. Show you some of these again when we get to quality management. All right, so let's stop there. It is 7:12. 7:22, let's come back. We'll do the all-important contract types and right into quality management, and we'll be done for the evening. Okay, folks? And by the way, before we, any questions?
No. The only thing I would ask is put the last screen up, and then I could write it down when we have break.
Okay.
If you don't,
okay.
If you don't mind.
No, I don't. I don't mind at all. Okay. This one here. That's a good screen. I'm going to put the stop at. How about you, Joe? Any question?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Go into the all important, and there you are. There you go. Let's go into the all important contract types that you're going to need to know for the test. Okay. And this is kind of the heart and soul questions of procurement management. Like I said, they'll ask you a lot of questions about the make and buy, and so you'll see some questions like that about the things I just showed you in the .1. But you're liable to see questions here in these contract types. And I'm going to show you there are 3 big contract types and then subtypes under each of those for the first 2 anyway. And I'm going to take you through them, and here they are. The first big type of what they call fixed price contracts. The second are called cost reimbursable contracts. And the third is time and material contracts. Now, there are different flavors, honest to God, and I've seen all kinds of deals made in my career for the exam, because I got to keep reminding myself this is a PMP prep course. So I'm going to show you these contract types, what you need to know for the test, kind of give you a flavor of why I would use each one, okay? And because you're going to get questions like that. And what I want you to do is, before I leave this screen, as I show you the contracts, just like I did with risk, okay, I want to point out to you that there are 2 sides of the table. And you, at any point in your career, might be on 2 sides of the table. I've been both the project manager inside my company, and I've also been the vendor outside of my company looking in. Okay, so I need to look at a contract from both sides of the ball. As a good project manager, that's what I should do in an application. So I'm saying that some of the questions you might see on the exam, read the question, because the flying element might be they're asking you from which perspective are they asking you from. All right, are you the vendor in this situation, or are you the customer in this situation? All right, and as I look at contract types, I want you to see it that as I showed you the 3. I'm sorry if that was a little bright. I'm sorry, I was looking for something less bright, but I'm sorry. Anyway, if I showed you the 3, if you look at it almost as a prism, as I'm showing here, of risk. So all the way down from one end is the fixed price, where the risk is to the seller, through cost reimbursable up to time and materials, where the risk is almost all to the buyer. So what I'm saying is that for visualizing, okay, what you're doing here in your contracts, why you would do them, and what the advantages are, and the risks, and the risk scale is a really good way to keep you on track of, or to keep these contract types straight in your mind for you. Okay, let me show you what I mean by this. Let's start with fixed price contracts, all right, because they're the easiest to explain. Most of the risk, like I just showed you, if not all of the risk, is to the seller. And the classic example and here you would, good project managers would tie it to a tight scope. Let me get back to that point here in a second. Let me show you the classic example of a firm fixed price, a fixed firm price first. Okay, is something that I'm okay with, maybe in materials. When would I use a firm fixed price? It means exactly what it sounds like. It means I'm going to give you $1,000 and that's it. If you, the seller, okay, overrun for whatever reason, that's your problem. That's what I'm trying to get to here. And a fixed price, it's fixed price from my standpoint, from the vendor, from the customer standpoint, that I'm only going to pay $1,000. I don't care what it takes you after that. From the vendor standpoint, why would I take a firm fixed price contract? Well, the best example is a material vendor, somebody that I buy 2x4s from. It's a firm fixed price. They're happy with that. I'm buying 24, yards of lumber or whatever, and I paid this price, and so it's a firm fixed price. Okay. Still, the risk is on them and not me if there's risk, or even though that's a simple transaction. Because let's say they deliver and the lumber's cracked or something, they need to replace that out of their pocket at no charge to me, and I'm not, and I can be belligerent and indignant if I want and I'm not paying another cent because it's a firm fixed price contract. See what I'm saying? That's one of the reasons. I would say the other guy that might use this is, say, a Mr. Burns, all right, who wants to really control their contractors and control their costs. And if it costs more, they don't care. I can just picture a guy, man, grab, a contractor for, putting a pool in the guy's backyard. And he's almost hoping that as he's watching the crews work, that they start to hit big boulders or something, and they got to bring in heavy equipment. And he can run down there and say, I don't care what it costs. This is on you. I told you 5,000. I meant 5,000. It's almost like they take pleasure from it. I worked for guys early in my career that used contracts, and they really did. They bled it for every nickel they were, and they were ballyhooed in the company. They were like they were some kind of heroes or something. Guys like that, now at my point in my career, I make them mortal enemies. They're guys that need a lesson taught to them. There is a reason for a firm fixed price. The other good thing that it does, though, from a project man standpoint, was we like absolute numbers. We like to plug into our spreadsheets and our software numbers that are not going to move. We like that. Okay. So, and in the case of where we can use a firm fixed price, even on a labor thing, it's a small little job, and I'm in my budget, I got $1,000 in it. Do you want the job or not? All right. I don't have to be a hard guy. I mean, to employ this, but this is what you need to know for the exam. Firm fixed price is what it sounds like. Is that I'm only paying X no matter what. After that, all risk goes to the seller. Second one is a fixed price with an incentive fee. Why would I use this? Is because I want to make sure that, one, I still get a fixed price, but I get an incentive fee because I want to make sure, I want that level of quality, and I want that level of comfort that they're going to deliver on time, or they'll be there when they said they were. And I'm going to have something in it for them if they do that. Technically, what I'm saying is that I'm getting a fixed price, but if they perform on as contracted or better, if they come in better, I want to give them an incentive to do so, because I want the comfort level in it. Still have a fixed price to plug in, and an incentive fee can be based on a percentage of that fixed price, so it's still a fixed fee if you think about it. But what I'm doing is incentivizing a good vendor here. Then that's what I'm doing. The third type of fixed cost is and before I show that, let me go back to the tight scope point that I skipped over. I would use a fixed price contract if I had a really tight scope, as another good example, okay? I know, yada, yada, yada. There's no explaining. There's no, it's very cut and dry here, so it's a very tight scope, all right? I want 3 walls painted, and I want you out of here by this afternoon, all right? That's pretty tight scope, and I'll give you $50 for it. And it's just as an example. I would use a tight scope. I want to use a tight scope. Remember, I'm not Mr. Burns, but I am a custodian of the company, but I also want to make sure that I have a tight scope. I want this guy to actually be able to perform what I'm contracting him for. Just because I hired the bum on the street that'll take any price doesn't mean I'm going to get what I need done or done well. All right. At I am a custodian of the company to get the best price and the best value. But when it comes to taking care of a good vendor, I also call that being a custodian of, because it's long-term health of the company, is doing good things for my vendor when they earn them. Okay. Stop there. Just as a contract type. Fixed price also has a problem with it. And that's because it's like Judge Judy would say, it's the 4 corners of the contract. So what I'm saying is usually fixed price contracts are usually tied to something that's also fixed, like a contract that's awfully hard to amend once it's already started. So I might do a fixed price contract as a simple little 4 quarters of the contract thing, like Judge Judy said. But what if I wanted to add to it? I might have to tear up on an original agreement and start all over or something because of the rigidity of fixed price contracts. I may want a little bit of flexibility, and I may want it because it's good for me, it's good for my vendor, it's good for my project. I want to be able to be a little nimble. I may not be as tight a scope as I had before. I might want the ability to add a few things without having to come up with a whole new agreement. But I want to do it in the context of risk. I want to be able to share my risk over a spectrum from this point on with my vendor. Like I said, share the pain, have a little skin in the game. So I'm going to use what's called cost reimbursable contracts. Now let's talk about, before I even show them to you, the types. By the way, I just got to go back and show you FP, but let me finish this point here with cost reimbursable. If nothing else, from a risk standpoint, I'm going to reimburse my legitimate costs. So the contract types I'm going to show you are going to recoup legitimate costs plus something else. All right. Back to fixed price, because I forgot to talk about the last one. The last one, and they may ask you a question about it on the exam, is called fixed price with economic price adjustment. This is for contracts that use things that have big swings in prices, like oil prices that swing the cost of the price of a barrel of oil. Holy cow, it's going up and down this summer. Okay, so in a fixed price, I have fixed price, but I'm also considering that it's fixed price, but I'm considering that I'm allowing for the swings in price. I still have the fixed price for everything else, but my fixed price for my base commodities and stuff I have to take in consideration. It's a weird kind of contract, okay? But it takes into consideration the cocoa futures and stuff like that, okay? The wild swings in prices of commodities later on, okay? Those are your fixed price contracts that you need to know for the exam. Over the cost reimbursable contracts, which you're probably going to see more questions about, but you will see fixed price. But remember, the key characteristics of fixed price contracts is fixed price means fixed price. Okay, so even with an incentive, it's still fixed price plus an incentive, right? That the risk is chiefly or completely to the seller, and that changing a contract when it's fixed is a little more difficult than when I use a cost reimbursable that has flexibility, that allows for flexibility. So now let's move over to the cost reimbursable contracts. And again, it's a risk management strategy. It's also a vendor management strategy, because I want flexibility on a couple of different levels, right? So risk is shared between both of us. Now, there's a formula called point of total assumption that I'm going to show you on Thursday. I want to save it for the financial calculations. But what this means is that I'm going to recoup my costs, like I told you, in cost reimbursable contracts. But from that point on, there's risk involved, okay? That from here's my actual cost plus. I'm going to share that risk between me and my vendor. I might make it top heavy them, top heavy me. I may have a sliding scale where it's top heavy me for a little while until such time as it's all them now. And I'm going to show you a formula you're going to need to know on the exam called point of total assumption, where we're no longer sharing risk, that it's completely all on them. So in effect, it turns into a fixed price contract from that point on. Okay. I'll explain that on Thursday, but we're only going to share risk with our vendor for so long. All right. We're only going to, we want to make sure in a cost reimbursable contract that we account for all of our costs. And we use a cost reimbursable contract. One of the characteristics is that the scope is a little less defined, right? We want that flexibility to add and make some changes without having to redo an entire contract or new addendums or all that kind of stuff, right? Here's the different types, and they look a lot like the ones I just showed you, but they're different in the ways that, let's start with cost plus fixed fee, all right? So in all three that I just showed you here, that I'm going to explain to you, you see cost plus. So that means that first and foremost, we're going to account for and recoup our costs, all right, and pay for our costs. We're willing to pay for real costs, is what we're saying here from the customer side, okay? And from the vendor side, we're saying, I got to at least get my costs back, all right? So we're in agreement there, all right? That's why I wanted to show you these contract types from both sets of eyes, all right? The first one I want to show you is the cost plus fixed fee. That's kind of a version of a fixed price contract in the flexible world. I'm getting back my running costs. And by the way, I account for those costs because when I tailor my contracts, I put in the terms and conditions. How do I prove real costs? I want to see the invoices. I want to see a bill of material. I want to see the timesheets. Whatever it is that you're claiming are real costs, so that I want to see those. So again, as a control device, T's and C's, terms and conditions. I told them I want, and they have, and the reporting schedule, I want to see every week. I want to see these costs on a running basis. And I'll pay for real costs. And I at least got to get back my real costs, Clark. So we're hunky-dory, okay, until we get to a certain point. You pull this off, and I'll give you a fixed fee on top of it. So I'll give you, your original cost plus a fixed fee, that's your profit, all right? And I like that too, because it's a number I can plug into a spreadsheet that's not going to move. So that's why I like both sides, and I'm happy with that on the vendor side, because again, I might be happy that I'm either happy with cost plus because I know my costs, or I'm a material vendor that this is a standard transaction, and I'm happy with a fixed fee as my profit. Okay, so both sides and why I might use it. The second type is a cost plus incentive fee. Much like a fixed price with an incentive fee, I'm trying to control my costs, and I want to incentivize to either deliver on time or ahead of schedule. So again, I'm going to put an incentive in. So the first part is cost plus. I'm going to justify my costs, and I'm going to put in an incentive for my vendor to deliver on time or before schedule. I use this because on the customer side, because I control my costs and I'm incentivizing my vendor. It gives me a level of comfort, right? From the vendor's eyes, I take this because at least my costs are covered. And there's an incentive fee, probably a percentage of what I save that becomes my profit. I can live with that. We do this all the time. That's why I would use the second one. The third one is kind of strange. Okay, it's used in more in institutional and education, more in academia, that kind of thing, in the worlds of grants and things like that, where I have my cost plus. So again, I'm covering all my legitimate costs, but I have a fee for an award here, like I do within a grant. It's $5,000 on top of that is your fee for on top of that. So it could be a fixed fee, but it's an award that's PMBOK describes as kind of vague. All right, it's kind of up to the institution of what that fee is, almost like it's non-negotiable, and almost like you don't even know what it is before you do it. This is the weirdest of the three kinds of contracts. But the point of cost reimbursable and where you might see questions, so think about why you would use through these types of contracts, and you'll get the questions correct. I'd use a fixed price contract, okay, because I want to control my costs. I want a number that I can not to exceed number. That may be one reason. I incentivize, so I'll use an FPIF because I still want that fixed price, but I want to incentivize my vendor to perform. The vendor looks and says, I'm okay with that and accepts. See what I mean? I want you to understand why we use these, particularly the cost reimbursable ones, which are kind of contracts that will allow for the flexibility, will allow me to add to make moves and changes. So I'm still covering my costs. So that's really the kind of the key to those. So I'm covering legitimate costs and I'm building in a way for my vendor to make some money on the deal, a legitimate profit, either in a fixed fee so that I control even not only my costs, but the profit that you're going to make, or I select a second one where I incentivize you. So maybe now what I really want you to do is come in before budget. So whatever you save me, I'm going to pay you a fee plus a piece of that too. I can structure a contract like that to truly incentivize my vendor. Maybe make him really hop along and exceed expectations because that's in his best interest to do. And then the third one, as I said, the awards fee. The last type of contract type is the time and materials, okay? And again, we're now down the other end of the spectrum that I showed you of risk, where risk here in fixed prices was risk was all the seller. Now the risk is basically mostly with the buyer because time materials, to give you a real world example, is like getting in a cab and having the meter running. It just keeps running, time and materials. Whatever I do, I'm billing it to the job, all right? So vendor loves this, all right? I don't really have any incentive to be effective. Everything I do seems to be billed, and especially if the customer's not watching. The customer's asleep at the wheel and accepting all my billings. This is really all the risk comes to the buyer, okay? Because it's open-ended. I really don't know what this is going to cost me when this is all done, said and done. I don't like time and material contracts, but sometimes I have to do them because situations make me do it. From the vendor's point of view, this is my very favorite. So like I said, I tried to show you all three of these from both sets of eyes, why I would do that and show you the risk to both ends and the scale all the way down. Before I leave this screen, this is what you need to know for the exam, these types. So know them. So if you don't understand, maybe I can explain them again. But in the test questions, what they're going to ask you is the application. So they're going to give you a scenario, and maybe you're going to explain either what type you're going to use, or they're going to give you a scenario, and they're going to ask you, what type of contract are we using right now that fits the question that they asked, that fits the circumstance? And I'll say, that sounds like a cost plus incentive to me, okay? So know what the contracts do, and that's because that's the type of questions you're going to get on the exam. I went through this kind of once to show you the contract types. This is kind of important, so I'm going to stop here and ask: are you guys okay? You got questions?
I'm okay because I remember this from previous, not from you, but previous past life.
Okay.
Anyway.
But you can see the prism of, first off, of risk, right? That starts with seller and ends up with buyer, going from fixed price all the way to time. The cost reimbursable contracts. If I had to bet nickels, I would bet that you're going to see more questions in the cost reimbursable because these are more situational. So what I'm saying, these are more where they can write a question that has situations and circumstances in it. You need to know them all, but they make sense. This is not hard to memorize. What we're talking about, seven different contract types. All right, time materials being a contract type and a category in and all of itself, right? But the tight scope and why, some of the characteristics. Why would I use a fixed price? The tight scope, the control, to have an absolute cost, right? That kind of thing. But the limitations are that I got to rewrite the contract or some language to that effect. So I tell you this stuff so you see it in the question, you can say, you know, I love that clerk. Okay, when he was on that screen, he talked about stuff, and I'm seeing it in the question. I'm seeing exactly what he meant when he says they're telling me stuff, and I'm really kind of pulling it out of the question so that I know we're talking about a cost plus incentive contract, aren't we? And that's what we're talking about. All right, and you answer the question asked, and you do it correctly. So I'm kind of trying to give you thought process too, because really that's where they're going to ask you. They may ask you some memorization here. You have to memorize these types of contracts, all right? But the use of them and when you would use them, why you would use them, and you can see them as a vendor management tool, right? Right? And a risk management tool. Questions. Believe me, we'll see this again on the review. So I'm not asking you to go, oh yeah, Clark, I'm absolutely so happy with this. But these are the contract types that you're going to get asked about on the exam. It'll be a handful of questions, 6, 8 questions probably on contract types and their uses. So ask me now if you have confusion at this point is really what I want to know. How you feeling, Jill, about what I showed you here?
Yeah, I think I'm okay.
Okay, good. Then I'm going to move on then, okay, from contract types. And again, we'll touch on it in the quick review. I want to say a warp speed review. We'll say warp 2. It's not warp 9. We do a warp 2 maybe, but we do kind of go through, review the methodology one time quickly. And like I said, I intersperse it with some examples so that we kind of get all the way through it in a session and a half. Okay, let's go to conduct procurements where I was showing you. And why am I showing you here in planning when this is an execution process? Because I really can't explain it later, okay? I really got to show it to you now. And this is where I think it's so what did we do in dot one? Came up with the rules of the road. First, we decided whether we're going to do an outsource or not. Here we have decided we're going to do an outsource. So here's the rules of choosing, okay? Choosing our vendors. What's important to us? First, from an objective standpoint, what's important to us from a requirement standpoint, when we do our selection, what's important to us till we get to a point where we're actually going to select a vendor and award them the contract and manage that relationship to the end of the contract, and who knows from there forth in what, okay? Let's look at 12.2 first. I wanted to show you the process first and then talk about it, all right? And I'll show it to you as I'm talking about it. You'll see what I mean. That's why I want to ask your opinion. If you think that this really is a planning process in disguise, all right? The inputs, you got the procurement management plan, of course, the dot one, which is the dot one is always an input to its subsequent processes. That's a good pattern to remember, the zipper pattern for memorization. Procurement documents, right? So again, what are we doing here? We're going to select vendors. So when we were on the other side of the table, we needed to see stuff, right? So we're going to see, we're going to have, so those procurement documents that we talked about, the RFPs, the RFIs, those are control documents from the other side of the table that says, this is how we're going to control communications back and forth. From the vendor side, these are the forms I use for me to move along in the process because I want the contract awarded to me. Okay. Source selection criteria, that's for us. Okay. What's important to us on a lot of levels. And then seller proposal. So remember now, we sent out an RFP with a statement of work and a work breakdown structure sent out. This input assumes that we're getting responses now from the world somehow, and we're going to start to look at those here with this process. We're going to evaluate the seller's responses back to our original proposal. That's why I'm saying that our original output, when we send out a statement of work and a work breakdown structure, I like to play my cards face up at that point. I'll beat the vendors up later, believe me. When it comes down to price, when we get down to the last step, that's when I can and I do turn it up a little bit. Here I don't. I want complete understanding. Okay, so because when these proposals come back, I want them to show me that they understand so I can get down to those final 3, right? Those project documents, make or buy decisions that justify going in this direction in the first place. That procurement statement of work I told you that we look for from our client, we're going to create for our vendors. OPAs and EPAs. Now, and you don't have the EEFs here because we're looking outside the company. Tools and techniques. First off, give me a second. Let me take a swallow because I'm getting gravelly. Thank you. Some of the tools and techniques we use are bidder conference. So here we've already sent out, and we've got some of those seller proposals. They got questions. They can send us questions by email and a few other things, but a bidder conference is a formal tool and technique you want to know for the exam. And they may ask you this, and what it does is that you invite all your bidders into one big conference, all right? That means they all see each other, they can all hear each other, they all hear what you're saying all at once. They're hearing all the questions that vendor A asks, vendor B's hearing it. Everything's above board here. I don't have to re-explain it. There's no re-inflection. Get all your questions out now. So a lot of things get done here. It clears up whatever conversations need to be happening, whatever ambiguities. I want to make sure they understand what I want so they can bid on it, all right? And create a schedule that works later and all of that. Plus, I want them to meet each other. So I want them to see that I'm serious. I want them to see I brought in serious people. And this is the beginning of putting the cats in the bag kind of thing, okay? Explain later what I mean by it. Well, maybe I'll explain it now. Or when I get down to final criteria, then I get to where I put cats in a bag and I shake it up and let them compete against each other on price. That's the metaphor I'm going to use at the end. Right now, we're all hugs and kisses, right? So all hugs and kisses, everything's above board. I want to answer everybody's questions, common understanding, all right? I'm going to use proposal evaluation techniques. Again, PMBOK is very generic. It says proposal evaluation techniques. Know of them. There are many ways to evaluate proposals. You're going to use the techniques that you've seen in your career, that your company uses, the ones that you've seen work before kind of thing, okay? So those are the best ways to answer the questions when they talk about these tools and techniques. Again, the bidder conference, back to that, you probably see a question that says when everybody's in the room together or something. Something either they're going to come right out and tell you or they're going to infer it in the question, right? We're all smart. And so read the question and read between the lines too, all right, to understand what they're asking you. They're independent estimates. This is, especially when we outsource. When we outsource, they remember part of the risk is that one of the reasons we might have outsourced is because it's not in our field of expertise. So that's risk, is that we're going to bring a vendor in and trust that they know what we don't know, okay, and can do it in the fashion we hope they can. So independent estimates help us out, all right? Independent estimates it's a good place to start before I even send out an RFP. I want to have an idea what to expect to see back from those seller proposals. So I'm going to do, and in today's world, it's Googling. It's YouTubing, all right? To go out there, and every industry council has maybe some market prices out there, general market prices on all the commodities in the world, all right? So I should be looking at all this, and if I don't, shame on me. All right, I shouldn't be completely clueless when I outsource, but I do add risk because they're experts in something that I'm not, all right? So independent estimates help me out. Again, expert judgment, take with a grain of salt, verify, trust but verify, et cetera, et cetera. Advertising, you might get a question on, what does that mean? I have to tell the world that I need something, right? So I'm going through channels, maybe LinkedIn, maybe I take out a full page ad in the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm going to advertise. Hear ye. I'm making an announcement. I'm accepting bids on the following request for proposal, all right? Contact Clark Fuss ad, whatever, for the full details or whatever. And then they get to me and I send them off complete package. Really, that's what we're putting together. We're going to put together an RFP pack, right? That's going to include some statement of work. It's going to include but we advertise. We got to tell the world we want them to bid on this, all right? And a lot of people are just sitting there waiting to see these salivating so they can bid on something, okay? You use different analytical techniques. Some of them are qualitative. Some of them are quantitative, right? Again, they're just generic here in the PMBOK. We'll know of them for the exam and that you would use qualitative tools and quantitative tools. Makes sense. First I have to come up with, standards, and then I got to have a way to be able to select against. I need to compare. Procurement negotiations, that's at the end, the T's and C's. And I don't mean necessarily just beating them up on price, but this is where it's included. This is where All things being equal, one of you are going to get this contract, and the other two of you are going to go home hungry. And you did a lot of work to get to this stage, and you're going to go home with nothing to show for it. All right. Yeah. Keep that in mind. It is a factor in negotiations. All right. It's that urgency thing. It's that we talked about that earlier. There's winners and there's losers. You can use this as a hammer, or you can use this as a lever. All right. In procurement negotiations. And again, the outputs, if you look at the outputs, we're going to have the first one is selected sellers. So we put them subjected those proposals and our the guys that won our business subjected them to a bunch of processes and tools and analysis. And we now decided that we selected our vendors. We selected our sellers, and we created agreements for them. And now we're going to use those agreements to manage the relationships. When it comes to whether they affect schedule and cost, and they will, most outside vendors will in some sort of fashion or not, but to take in those resource calendars that we took into consideration earlier. Remember, we may have to weave in their crews into our labor. We may have to weave in their material deliveries in, okay? So so they're going to affect our resource calendars. All things we do before we finally baseline our triangle and start our project, right? So here's how procurement management talks. We're selecting our sellers and we're telling them, go ahead and get started. Again, and of course the other outputs are change requests that there always are, and the outputs and the effects of progressive elaboration. Again, here's where I'm going to ask your opinion, folks. I wouldn't wait until I get to the execution process group to do this. I would have been doing this back in planning, right? Don't I need to know who my vendors are, what their costs are going to be, how I'm going to interweave them into my schedule before I ever base on my project. So again, my pet peeve is this really is a planning process. The planning should have had two process, maybe create a process, manage vendors or something, and put that in as an execution process using agreements and I'm just saying, for the exam, this is an execution process group process. I needed to show it to you here because I don't think it makes sense if I don't explain it to you now. This is what we did is we came up with, so let's go a little deeper on how we did conducted procurements. The word procurement meaning purchasing, right? So it's labor, agreements, and material and everything. So procurement's a general term. We're evaluating and selecting vendors here, okay? So for the exam, let me talk about a couple of things and the mechanics of things that you're going to have to do for the exam, or know for the exam. We're going to review our seller responses. This is really the first whittle them down place. This is the first place where I got to tell you, I've seen the first responses come back and they were just ridiculous, okay? Almost looked like a second grader did it. I can eliminate you right away. You are not the type of company I'm going to do. You don't understand. You have no clue what I need, or it's obvious to me that you're not going to be able to produce something in their first response back to me, even if it's something nice, but it looks like it's all cut and pasted from something else. That shines out to you. Use your experience. Use your nose here a little bit, all right? When you're reviewing those seller responses, I'm telling you that even something nice with a lot of graphs and charts could be just a reprint from something else. You might be able to pick up on that by looking through it and saying, wait a second. You know what I mean? From more to the wise, all right? We're also round after round of weighted criteria and other selection, but we've done this before. We did this before. What's important to us, so what gets in and what doesn't get in. And once it's in, what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. So we have a couple of rounds of defining and then coming up with measurements that make sense so that we can make a selection for our project, because we can't live in planning, right? Round after round of weighted criteria. All right, I'm going to show you simple examples here in the next couple screens. We're also going to, by the time we're finished, first deciding what's important to us, deciding which vendors can actually do this for us, and then awarding a contract. We get to this point, and then we finally award a contract to a vendor. And we're going to use the contract itself as a vendor management tool, and all the attachments that were agreed to that came to that point. So schedules and scope documents and work breakdown structures that were attached to that document, just like we agreed to when we agreed to our customer. All those agreements become part of conduct procurements from that point on. They're using them to control us, right? So we do the same when we look at outside the company. Okay, this is examples of a sample of a simple criteria of matrixing criteria, just like we did with risks. We have to decide X and Y, right? What's important to us, and a scale to measure it. So here we did. This is what we did. Came up with characteristics that are important to us. We're looking at more qualitative here, right, than quantitative. Maybe some quantitative with pricing, but the ability to meet customer service needs is a qualitative thing. So some of these are qualitative, and we weight them as importance to us. We we can see that by weighting by 10, those two, the ability to meet our service levels and to meet our program guidelines are very important to us. So we're going to weight those criteria heavier than the others and come up with base scores so we can move on with the process. I'm not going to belabor this because this is what you need to know for the exam, that these are the type of tools that I've showed you time and time. So we love Matrix, do we not? To help us whittle things down, to come to consensus. And not only a consensus, but a measurable consensus. We're actually going to come up with scores that were based on real measurements, all right, that were based on real requirements, the funnel to the fence to the bite size, all right, that works for us now in planning and helps us keep things on the path when we're executing. This is just one example of how we did a selection criteria. But before we get to selecting a vendor, we want to talk about features of the vendors first, because it may be deeper. Our selection criteria might be deeper than just looking at company by company. I want to select deeper than that. I want to look at their software. Then I want to look at their company, okay, to see if they're stable. So their solution that I'm looking at might be pretty good for us. It wins so far, but now I'm looking at company to company. Are they a viable company? So these are things that matter to me. So now I'm looking at my selection criteria on 2 or 3 different levels. Within the levels, I'm whittling things down, but level to level, I'm looking at things as a complete package, as a complete solution, as it means to me. And I do that using some of this weighted criteria. Okay. Again, another example, very simple of selecting vendor A or vendor B based on requirements I need and weighting those requirements. And here I select vendor B because they finish with a score of 3.85. They win. If this is the only thing that I was using to select them on, right? I'm not, of course. I'm not. This is round after round, and these are based on criteria. So like I did with risks, I had to first come up with what's important, what constitutes risk and what constitutes risky, and what's a major severity of impact. And so I had to come up with values first before I even got down to the individual risks themselves. So long before selecting vendors, I have to come up with all those criteria first. And I did that with the dot ones, and I want to do that, right? I want to do that because I want to make sure when I do get down to those last couple of vendors, and it is about price and it is about availability and things like that, that I'm going to make them compete with each other. I'm going to make them maybe give me an extra 10 users and a license or something. But at that point, I don't even want to get there yet. I want to make sure that the solution works for me, that the vendors that I'm down to are the right people, no matter who I select. I won't be going wrong. And so now I get down to those finer points, right? Okay. That's what I wanted to show you here. Now let's go to quality management, and we'll be done. We'll call it a night. And we're at 8:06, so it's pretty good. Well, it's about 20 minutes or so to get through this, because this, like I showed you in human resource management, I'm only going to show you one process in the play. So remember, I'm teaching this course this way, right, across process groups. So I'm not going to show you A2 and A3 till we get there. But again, I'm going to show you the dot one. It's going to set all the rules for planning quality management, and then I'm going to take those rules and those and those measurements and mindset into battle with me. So I'll execute those things, to inspections and audits that I mandated back here in one, and I'm going to use those Uh, that baseline to make sure that I stay on. And if I have to generate CAPAs back, I do so, okay? I know I'm speaking your language here somewhat more, Jill, than I am speaking Aubrey's. I will say quality. Am I not? So
Yeah.
we'll breeze through this pretty quick because we're not getting into serious detail. I will tell you this, that as you can see, it's only 3 processes. So that's the first thing. So project manager, PMBOK, kind of looks at quality management. I don't want to say in a rudimentary factor, but and through the eyes of a real quality professional that sees things like Lean Six Sigma and, design for Six Sigma and things like that. That are looking at real quality principles. This is kind of rudimentary. Remember, I told you back when I was a puppy and working for just the slave drivers, they were only worried about bringing in on time and on budget. So things like quality and things were kind of pushed to the side. They gave it lip service. Yeah, we'll do a quality job, but they didn't really mean it. You can tell because they never measured it. They never met about it. They never talked about it. Here we make sure that we do, okay? So we're going to plan it in. So even though it's not as great as, say, bringing in a Master Six Sigma black belt and doing all that, we are taking quality into consideration. We're going to plan for it. We're going to bake it into the cake. We're going to make sure that we put in activities in that where we do inspections and we do audits and we do sample and we do measure against the quality requirements. So we're gonna compel ourselves to at least do at least a pretty decent job with quality. All right. So let's start, and again, we'll start with the dot ones, and then there are things about the mindset of quality, the basics of quality that I got to show you over the next 20 minutes that you'll see on the exam. These are basic. You'll hit them out of the park. Okay. First, let's talk about qualities of mindset. You'll see things like this on the exam, and this is the reason I show them to you. Again, you'll be reading questions and you'll see it in the, what are they getting at? What are they asking me about? So when they talk about quality and they're trying to get you to show them that you understand the mindset, I don't know, the quality needs to be baked into the cake. Really, that's where I'm going with this first bullet here, is that it needs to be planned, designed, and built right into the deliverable itself. So not just the deliverable, but the project management processes also are going to be quality controlled. And we're doing this right from the beginning. So as we're progressively elaborating our baselines, we're considering quality. It's one of the Joker's henchmen at the table, right? And it says quality man. I'm sorry. Did I make you a Joker's henchman? Because that's you, Jill, right? I'm sorry.
I've heard cops, but I haven't heard that yet. That was new.
Okay, well, you're one of it says that's what I'm saying on your sweatshirt. It says quality management. And you're insisting that quality be considered not just in lip service, but that we consider from the very beginning and that we build in processes to make sure quality is met. So we're gonna define quality requirements and stick to it. And so when we're going to get to a point where we measure our deliverable right before we give it to our customer against 2 sets of requirements, quality requirements and scope requirements. Show you that here before the night's out, or maybe I won't, but I'll show you that later on in the methodology. Here, let's stick to quality. Again, it's just a mindset thing. You bake it into the cake. Okay, come on. Quality management ensures the project and delivers actually satisfy the needs for what the project was undertaken for. So, voice of the customer. I know that means something to you, Jill. That we actually the projects are going all the way back to when I first started the lectures. I said the projects exist for reasons, right? They exist to satisfy requirements or empower us or something, but we do it for a reason, all right? And we do it because the voice of the customer told us so. All right. So, and I know that means more to a quality professional than it does to an old dog of a project manager like me. I know I gave a talk to the PMI DVC 2 years ago in September, that their September fall meeting. It was a pretty good size room, about 200 people there. But mostly it was a combination of ASQ people and PMI people. And really who I was talking to that night were the old heads in PMI saying that the quality people use superior tools. Maybe we know how to run a project and we know how to run a tight ship, but some of the tools that they use in the quality side are superior to anything that we use. especially when it comes to the front end requirements, all right? That when you guys are designing for 6 months, you guys really use House of Quality was what I showed them. Now, I'm not belaboring, but I'm just saying you guys do a much better job of it, okay? So voice of the customer. Quality management addresses both the project quality processes. That's the project itself and quality within those processes and project quality deliverables. We basically do that through inspection and through analysis. What do we do with process? We measure them to see, and we measure them over time to make them tighter and tighter. So here's where we go with quality management. We're looking at them as they're happening, and we're looking at them in retrospect, right? We're trying to make our processes better now and in the future, both from a project standpoint and the deliverable later on, that we may want to do the same project again and again. Okay, quality figures in all the way start to finish. Quality should be part of every project, and then has a rock in the pond effect, just like being a professional is a rock in the pond effect. That once you set expectations that we do things well here, and we're going to do things not just with lip service to quality, but you're going to be expected to pass that inspection back on March 3rd. There it is. It's in the schedule. We're going to do a quality inspection. We're going to do a quality audit. And it's a rock in the pond effect. Like I said, when people have expectations of them, they tend to get things done. Okay. Quality requirements for the deliverable are tightly tied to the scope baseline. So like I'm going to show you when we get to the control processes, that scope, remember I showed you that scope, time and cost and risk had all of their processes in the planning process group, except for their control process. Scope had two control processes. The second one is tied to quality. Show you that when we get there, but that's why scope has two instead of just one, okay? And I'll show you that when we get there, and I'm mentioning it now, the quality requirements are tied to the scope requirements, that we're going to be reviewing them both before the customer will ever really sign off and take possession of the deliverable, all right? So as project managers, when we're still planning our process, we need to take in consideration all costs of quality. So time and costs of quality, just like time and cost of building a room or something, we're going to put in activities, inspections, quality inspectors, QA people, QC people that are going to do their things. I have to figure that into my project schedule. So one of the things I didn't tell you in work, when we do work breakdown structures, don't forget that there's always a leg for project management. When we're trying to break out all the deliverables and then get down to work packages, we have work packages too within our realm. Don't forget us, okay, when you start to break us down. All right. So as project managers, I'm reminding you, don't forget quality. That quality has costs. Quality has people costs, it has time costs, okay? It has material costs. So figure it into your, just like you would do any other costs, okay? Into your cost baseline. So again, here we are in quality, just like we did. We started with requirements. So we're going to be trying to identify quality requirements with a funnel. And when we first start talking about them with our stakeholders, we're listening to everything. But eventually we're going to have to funnel those requirements down to the ones that are actually going to get into the project. And once we do that, then we put fences around those requirements and establish measurable and criteria and all of those lines in the sand, all the metaphors, whatever works for you. And then we plan our project in bite-sized fashion. And like I said, that's not just work breakdown structures, even though they're very powerful. We also mean logs. We also mean matrix, and we also mean tools that structure, tools that that look at our project in bite-sized fashion. Because when you can look at something small, you can tend to be precise when you do estimates. And really, that's what we're looking for. Here, quality isn't so much, I guess maybe the activities and costs are precise, but it's also a mindset. I'm baking into the cake, right? Okay. Let's talk about some quality terminology you need to know, and I want to pick up the pace here. Quality versus grade, okay? You might get a softball question here. That there's a difference between quality and grade, all right? That quality is a degree with which an inherent characteristics. So it's possible to have high quality with low grade and low quality and high grade. So let me just make the quick point that high quality on the left, quality meaning this is a high performance vehicle on the left, but I may have a lot of maintenance problems with it. So I'm coming up with something that's in a low grade and vice versa, okay? With my Ford Explorer, I'm sorry, my Ford Focus over here, Fiesta over here. I can have high quality with low grade and low quality and high grade. Know the difference for the test. Like I said, I'm going to pick up the pace here. Know the difference between precision and accuracy, right? That accuracy, that precise is tight. It's being precise, is hitting the same mark all the time. Accurate is hitting the mark that you wanted to hit. So you want to do both, right? You want to be accurate and you want to be accurate all the time. So no, I'm not going to go through these, because like I said, I want to finish up here in the next 10 minutes. But, and this should be second nature to you. Know you might see this on the test of bullseyes, all right? Know the difference between precision and accuracy, and that we want to be down here, high accuracy, high precision, all right? PMBOK wants to know that customer satisfaction means meeting expectations, that the mindset is baking it into the cake, and that you might see a softball person saying that prevention keeps errors out of the process, inspection keeps errors out of the hands of the customer. So almost an upstream, downstream type of thing, okay? Continuous improvement, that's what quality is all based on. All quality principles are based on the constant PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act, right? That's what we do. We measure a process over time, try to remove the variance from it if we can, all right, for the next cycle so that the next cycle runs better. And then we want management to commit to the process, okay? Don't forget cost of quality, that you want to figure it into all your plans, particularly your cost and time baselines. You're going to have activities and they come with cost. Figure them into your baselines, all right? So let's look at that dot one before we leave. Obviously, the project management plan, when I say that, that means whatever form it's in, whatever of all the subsidiary plans and the buckets, whatever it's in at the time that we're using it. We use the process over and over again. Stakeholder register here, because they're the folks that, like risk register, the stakeholder register, we're going to be, this is the people, they're going to tell us what quality is. I don't want to get too nebulous, but quality is what our customers tell us it is. Quality is what they tell us it is. I know that industry can set benchmarks. We go between us. We can set what the sterling is and all between us. But it all really comes down to our customer tells us what quality is all about. Our requirement documents that we created. So these are the documents that we're going to use at the end to make sure, go along with our scopes documents, to make sure that we did indeed build a quality deliverable. Our customer can see that and that they're accepting it. And of course, EEAs and OPAs. EEFs and OPAs. We need to take this in consideration because quality, what does it mean to our organization, and what tools are available and templates available to help us drive quality. Okay, cost benefits analysis. Remember the cost of quality. The 7 quality tools I'm going to blitz through. Benchmarking. I just talked about how we can come up with benchmarking means the best of the best. So we're going to benchmark internally what's our best and benchmarking against our competitors. What's best that's out there. Okay, that's what benchmarking means. Know of it for the test. That's all. Design of experiments. This is where it's like a simulator where we change up values of inputs, maybe even states of inputs that we do in design of so plus minus as well as numeric values. Rerun the simulation, and we get another set of values, right? Another set of outcomes is what I'm saying. Those outcomes, we continue to change up those variables. We're not doing it willy-nilly. We're trying to change up variables because we're trying to come up with outcomes that we like. And if we can create outcomes that we like, then we'll use those, that we'll use the pattern we just created for our scheduling, for our planning. We just ran this, we let the scheduling software help us out. The modeling software help us out, okay? Statistical sampling is part of quality control. Is we're going out there, we're not going to check the entire population. We might, but we're probably not. We're just going to sample. We're going to sample every third or whatever to see if we're on quality as we review during execution. And we're going to do additional quality management tools. Again, just generic and meetings. So the outputs are a quality management plan, a process improvement plan. Because like I said, we're always looking at our processes. So how do we improve them in stream, and how are we going to improve them later? This plan is going to tell us how. With the metrics that we're going to measure everything by, those quality checklists that we created, all right? And of course, the effect of progressive elaboration on the buckets. Now, I want to go through the quality tools quick because it's 8:22. Just showing you what you need to know for the exam, folks. Really, you're not going to have to be quality experts. And like I said, PMBOK's probably going to throw a handful of quality questions at you just to say they addressed it and that they asked you about it, and you a serious questions. So even though there were only 6, they were serious questions. Okay, good for you. Cost of quality, remember that. Within cost of quality, you have different types of costs, all right? Prevention, appraisal, and failure costs, right? This makes sense that I'm going to spend money when it comes to quality. I'm going to do it in three tiers. I'm going to do it in prevention costs. So I'm going to spend money to bake quality into the cake ahead of time. So in my design processes, I'm going to think about putting quality controls and checklists and people and QA folks. These are prevention costs, all right? And there are costs. I'm also going to have appraisal costs. I'm going to have some appraisal costs in project management because I can't deliver my deliverable until I've appraised that it actually has met requirements. But if I do a good job in prevention, my appraisal costs are not going to be that much, are they? I'm going to appraise them. We're going to pass our tests. We're going to pass it along. But appraisal costs we want to try to keep down, but I know that that's what they are. They're matching up this, proving we met requirements. The costs, any costs that incur doing that, and failure costs. These are the ones, boo, we hate these, okay? These are the ones that bring non-conformance back. These are the ones that after we've already started, we're trying to add parts and we're trying to add, oh, it's nuts, okay? Really costly, really time consuming, not good for the reputation, et cetera, et cetera. You also have 2 bigger picture ways to look at costs so they may ask you costs of conformance. Those are the costs that you use, investments made to avoid failure. These are the kind we like. They're mostly prevention costs, right? Mostly prevention costs, but they're also using best practices when we design and implement things. These are also, and and from a quality eye, these are costs to conform. Costs to non-conform are try to correct failures. Those are many of the failure costs that we talked about in the other tier. That these are try to bring things back on course. And I'm not saying that you may not, even a well-run project may run into these costs that you have to incur for non-conformance or failure costs. They could happen. They just want to minimize them, okay, and keep them low, all right? Remember, from a mindset standpoint, much less cost to prevent than it is to correct, okay? Now let's talk about the 7 basic quality tools, and then we're going to be finished for the evening, folks, because that's it. We'll pick it up where we left off, where we're going to leave off on Thursday, which is a really good place. So let's look at the 7 quality basic tools. We all know them. Let's know for the test. The first one is the fishbone diagram, or also known as the Ishikawa diagram. And what we're doing here is we're trying to look for root cause. We're trying to find, we know we have a problem, and we don't want to keep putting the fire out all the time. So instead of treating the symptoms, we'd rather find the cause, okay? So here in a simple fishbone diagram, that it's usually done like this, where and you see in manufacturing the 6 M's or something. So you don't have to know fishbones because they're not going to get questions to use them. I want you to know what they are. They're logical ways to look at your organization, okay, to look backwards, to find primary and secondary causes of what could have caused the problem that you're experiencing now. So the head of the fish is usually your problem statement, all right? And then you're working your way backwards, looking at the areas where that could have caused it, the people, process, equipment. Follow what I'm saying? This is how this thing works, all right? So you're looking to trace root cause. I use the example of the burning house, all right, that the real cause is that you have a gas leak in the basement. But like, we're stupid project managers. All we're doing is running around putting the fire out. We put the fire
I got
out.
a question.
Sure.
Do they like, do you remember if they like show a picture and if we need to know what it is?
Yes.
Or will they?
Yes and yes. Yes and yes. You might see a picture of a fishbone diagram, so know it by sight. Or they might call it an Ishikawa or a fishbone diagram, so know it by its name. Okay?
Okay. And then it says then it might say use trace root cause cause of problems or problem statement.
That's correct. So that's the primary use of an Ishikawa or a fishbone diagram, is I'm trying to identify root cause. So I'm gonna follow the stems back. It looks like a fish, right? I'm gonna follow the stems back and investigate the big areas where the actual real cause of the problem might be. so I can eradicate it. Because once you've solved root cause, you've actually solved an issue permanently, haven't you? Again, I go back to the burning house issue where we put out all the fire. Now we put the flames out. We're all patting each other on the back, but we didn't deal with the root cause. So another spark happens. We left the gas on. Another spark happens, and the flames hit back again. The real root cause, that we looked further back, was the leaky gas pipe in the basement. Had we turned off the gas, we'd only had to put the flames out once, and the problem would have been solved for good. Then we could have brought a plumber in, fixed the leak, right? A gas main guy, whatever. That's the point of a Ishikawa diagram, finding the root cause. So know it by name. It's both known by a fishbone and Ishikawa, and its purpose is to go back and look at major areas to find root cause. Okay, the second one are flowcharts. We've all seen these. These are just process diagrams. We've either flow out a process here of, this was simple, getting a lamp to turn on, right? And you can see their little yes and no's, all right? Did we plug it in? Yup, go this way. Well, we didn't plug in the lamp. Well, then plug in the lamp, try it now, kind of thing. This is a very, very simple example. We use flow charts, and we do this to flow out our processes. We like to see our processes on paper because it tells us the story, all right? A lot of companies never did it. Just a simple fact that they flow out their process and look at it and say, wow, I never saw this before. Why do we have step 3 again? See what I mean? So that's the power of a flow chart. It helps you identify steps in a process for further analysis. Okay. Third one is check sheets, simple check sheets. Goes all the way back to ancient Chinese, I think, used these even before they invented abacuses. And this is really, pound for pound, maybe the most powerful tool of all the simple tools, because as the sheep would walk by or the yak would walk by, or whatever they were counting back in the Huns, whatever was counting, I just put a check mark. Nice and simple, right? Walk by, I get the 5 of them, I do maybe that sideways check mark across them. But whatever the case is I'm physically counting them as they go by me. There's no mistakes. It's a powerful record later that I can use in all kinds of different ways. All right, I'm going to plug this into a Pareto chart. If I was looking for show me where I'm getting a lot of my service calls, where I'm seeing a lot of my problems, checklists really are very, very powerful tools, okay? And because they're so simple in nature, all right? The next one I show you is the Pareto chart. And I showed you the last one first because, again, I'm looking for 80-20 here. Wouldn't it be nice if I could identify something that fixed 80% of the problems by just fixing 20% of the issues? That's what 80-20 means, is the 80% of your issues are generated by 20% of the sources. Okay, so I'm trying to show that. So this helps me do big wins all at once. I fix one problem. I've just solved 20 customer problems, or I just fixed a whole lot of variation, or whatever I did. But Pareto charts show me where big concentrations of my mathematics, depending on how I use the Pareto chart. I want to know where I'm getting big chunks of my readings all at once. I can fix a lot of stuff at once here. Okay, that's what a Pareto chart does. Just know of it. Okay. Histograms. This is your standard. This is your cumulative distribution. Okay, I'm looking at data over time, and here's where I'm building my bell charts, and here's where I'm doing my frequency distribution, coming up with my calculations for variance and standard deviation. All right, and here's where we're at. Let me see what time it is, because I got one more screen. It's 8:30 now. Should I wait and show you variance and standard deviation calculation on Thursday? I think I will. I think I'll stop here because it's 8:30. I think I'll show you how we do, and I'm going to use a very simple data set that you would never use in the real world, because in the real world, correct, Joe, you'll testify, you use large samples to do your statistical analysis, okay? I wouldn't use a data set of 3 measurements.
Right.
At least 9, I think, right? Or else I got to skew it with, I got, or it's 20, or it's 31, or whatever it is. But you got to have a decent data set. But just so I can show you how the formulas work for the exam, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to stop here. Um, we'll pick it up by showing you how you calculate variance and standard deviation from that cumulative distribution I just showed you. So the cumulative distribution, before I go too far, if you don't know what it means, is that I've been calculating, I've been measuring a process over time. Okay. My trip to work. Okay. And I've been calculating it over time, how long it takes me to go to work. And I've been creating a bell curve because it's not the same time all the time. But I start to bunch around what's called a mean, right? That it's kind of about anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes every day is my usual time. But sometimes if it's traffic, so I build a bell curve. And I'm going to show you how we calculate find the mean, variance, standard deviation, so you can do this for the test. And that's where we'll stop. Any questions, folks?
No.
We're in a good place because we'll finish this on Thursday. We're going to finish this, and the two last planning processes I got to show you of stakeholder management and communications management. They're quick enough, okay, and very important. I tie them at the hip. I want to teach them together because they kind of go together. You're creating a communications plan to cater to your stakeholders. So they really are two knowledge areas that are hand in glove, much more than any other two I might be able to point to and say they're hand in glove. So we'll get there on Thursday. Then we'll do the financial calculations. We'll take a break. Then we'll come back from the break on Thursday and do the execution processes. I'm sure we'll finish the 8, maybe even touch on a couple of the monitor control process. If we don't worry about it. On Monday, that's when we would do those 11 processes. They're very similar in nature to each other, and then right into review. So we're okay, folks. Unless you guys, I'm looking for feedback here. I'm looking for comments here. And I want them on the record, so I won't hit the stop record yet. But am I hitting the mark? Is this of value to you? Is this of the pace you're like? Am I hitting the things right? I ask you now because I want to be prepared when we get to the review to maybe do things different if I have to. This is me. I can't change who I am, but some things I can adjust. So what do you think?
I think it's fine. It's just maybe I know you're hitting key areas or key points, which is great. And then I'm like, okay, and maybe some slides don't really, they do pertain, but maybe they're not that important, which I know you're bypassing, which is fine. But we could always review the video and get it again and maybe pause and play and try to re-understand everything.
I appreciate it, because like even tonight, look, it's 8:35. I mean, this is a very weighted subject. Anybody that thinks they can teach at PMBOK and in some kind of boot camp, if that's the other thing you got to think about. If you took a boot camp and they try to jam all this into your head in 4 days and then go take the exam, I don't know how well you might have done. I mean, this is measured. This is for people that work for a living, and so that's how I designed the course. So, Jill, your comments, anything at all, positive, negative, anything is fine with me before we knock off.
Yeah, no, I think the pace is good. Like I said before, I do like that you review key topics again in the following class to reinforce. So I think that's really good.
Good, man. I'm glad to hear it. So what I'm going to do here is we'll stop here and we'll pick it up. We'll pick it up on Thursday with these simple calculations here to do variance and standard deviation. We don't live in this area. It's going to know how to do a couple simple things and identify how to upper and lower controllers. Then we'll do the financial calculations, depreciation, a few of those, and then we'll jump back and right into execution. I'm execution processes. As soon as we finish up here, and we're in great shape. Okay, folks. I'm getting a little tired, so I'm going to stop recording.